All right. So my name is Angelique Minette, and I am a homeschooling parent. I have 2 sons, and we have been homeschooling for 9 years. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody right now. Hang on just a sec. All right. You're welcome to unmute if you need to ask a question. You can also, if you want, throw it into the chat box, and I will be peeking at that as we go, so I can answer questions there if you don't want to interrupt. Once again, I am recording, so if you don't want to be recorded, let me know. Otherwise, just turn off your camera, and we're going to get started. One moment. Share my screen. Awkward pause. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Oh, I've got some more people showing up. Here we go. All right, so we're going to talk today about homeschooling basics. So many of you are brand new to homeschooling, although there are a few of you here who I know have been homeschooling for a while. So welcome, and I'm sure they'd be happy to share some information too. But we are going to talk today about homeschooling because there are so many. I've had almost 200 new people join the Facebook group for homeschooling in our area in the past month. So I know we've got a lot of interest. And this is something I wanted to do because it's something I didn't have when I started out homeschooling. So we're going to jump right into it. Here we go. First, before we get started, this presentation is intended for Illinois homeschoolers. Other states are going to have different requirements, so if you're here from another state, awesome, happy you're here, but make sure you know that your state may have different requirements. Information might change. I am a mom, I'm not a professional. These are my personal views, although I try very, very hard to make sure that this is really accurate information presented by the state. Again, I'm not a professional. If you have professional questions, you can ask a lawyer. But otherwise, I'm trying my best here, and I hope it helps. And I'm not liable for decisions. This is a legal disclaimer. I'm not liable for decisions you make in your own private school, your own homeschool. This material is copyrighted. I did put a whole lot of effort into it. So if you'd like to use it, I'm happy to present it. I'm happy to let you borrow it, but please don't share it indiscriminately without asking. All right. Come on, there we go. Okay, so first things first, ignorance of the law excuses no one. So just because you don't know about the homeschooling laws doesn't mean they don't apply to you. So it's very, very important that you know, first and foremost, before anything else, what the legalities of homeschooling are in Illinois. And we're going to talk about them. So the first place you can go to is a primary source. So in my real life before I was a homeschooling mom, I was in genetics, and I was taught about primary sources. And one thing for certain, you need to check your primary sources. So the primary sources in this case would be the Illinois state laws. You can go to ilga.gov and search the laws yourself and read through all of them, which sucks because it's really legalese. It's really dense. So my next recommendation would be the Illinois State Board of Education's website, because it's literally their job to give us the information and the interpretation of the laws. The good news is that they now have a homeschool landing page, which they did not used to when I started homeschooling. And it literally gives you all the different things that you need to be aware of according to the state for homeschooling in Illinois. If you have not been there yet, you need to go and check it all out. I do have links at the top of the page, and I will make this available as a PDF to everyone who attended. So don't be worried about scribbling down all the sites here. I will send it to you when we're done. In Illinois, compulsory attendance for school is for kids between the age of 6 and 17. You have to be between those ages to attend. And there is a bill that's going on right now that may make it to age 5. So you're going to have to watch if that affects you. But again, we'll talk about why that may or may not affect you a whole lot. Preschool and kindergarten are not currently required in the state of Illinois. So if you don't want to teach kindergarten right now, you don't have to. But that may change, again, when the compulsory attendance law is passed, if it's passed. Okay. The Illinois State Board of Education says that homeschooling is considered a form of private school. So that means any laws that apply to private schools apply to you. It says that the parent or the tutor needs to be competent. It does not define competent, but it just means competent. Some states require that you have a teaching license. Illinois does not. You just have to be competent. It requires that certain subjects need to be taught, which we will talk about, and that the student must receive an education at least equivalent to that which is offered in public schools. You'll notice how very unspecific it is. That means there's a lot of leeway here as long as you're giving them an equivalent education. Let's see, we got people joining still. Subjects required by law include language arts, mathematics, biological and physical sciences, social sciences, fine arts, physical development, and health. These are the things that the state says you have to teach. They don't define them exactly, but they say you have to teach. So you can't just like skip teaching math. You're gonna have to teach your kids some math. Time spent on homeschooling, they do not set any infrastructure. You don't have to have a certain number of days per year. You don't have to have a certain number of hours per month. And you're on your honor to provide an education equivalent, like we talked before, however you best see fit. So if your kids work well doing big long chunks of school, cool. If they work well doing like an hour at a time, then you can do it that way. If you want to go all year round, you can do it that way. If you only want to do it on weekends, whatever, as long as you're teaching the things that need to be taught, it's up to you to decide how you want to fit that into your schedule. Registration requirements. So there aren't any in the state of Illinois. You can choose to register with the state board or with your school district, but is entirely optional. There used to be some drama over, they made it sound like you had to register, but by law you don't have to register. I don't see the benefit of registering, so it's up to you. I've never registered as a homeschooler. The exception being if you decide to use some public school resources. So if you've decided your student needs, say, speech therapy and you'd like to use through the school, you might be required to register as a homeschooler to use those services. But for the general homeschooler, you really don't need to. Homeschool testing. So Illinois does not require or provide any testing for homeschool students. So that means there's nobody you report to, no tests that you have to turn in to anybody, and you're pretty much on your own. You're considered a private school. So private school students don't report to the public school. Private school students report to their own school. So that's what you do. You report to yourself. A public school may allow your student to participate in an assessment test at their own discretion. So for instance, you would like to have your child take a NOVA test. I know when my son was younger, NOVA test was for second graders, and they had them administer that when he was in kindergarten. So you can ask them, but they don't have to accommodate you. They might, but they don't have to. Also keep in mind that if you're using a non-traditional curriculum, these tests might not apply to your student. They might not be things that you've covered yet in your school. So keep that in mind if you do have them, are asking for them to be tested at the school. How to withdraw from public school. So if your child is currently in public school, and you would like to take them out to homeschool them, you need to write a letter. It could be a very simple letter, and it says, I am pulling my student or I'm moving my student to a private school, and have it signed and dated, and send it by certified mail to your child's school. You do not have to let them know that you are homeschooling. If you think that's might be an issue, you don't have to let them know that, because homeschooling is a form of private school. So you just say, I am withdrawing them to a private school. Children that have never been in public school, so say you have a kindergartner and they haven't been registered for school yet, you don't have to write the school a letter. They just are going to your private school. So for one of my children, he did attend public school for 1 year, and I wrote the letter, didn't have any problem. My other child is invisible to the public school. He's never been. So one had a letter and one didn't. Homeschooling help from the state. So you're considered a private school and are on your own, and since in the theme, there isn't any financial help from the state if you're a homeschooler, because you're considered a private school. So don't ask them for curriculum, don't ask them for money to pay for curriculum. You're on your own. There are a few, very few exceptions, and I will definitely go over those later. But pretty much if you're homeschooling, you're on, the state says, good luck. There's no financial assistance from the state. They won't provide the curricula. Yeah, we already covered this. You're legally considered a private school. Special education services. So this is a tricky area. Homeschool complicates special education services and IEPs. While a portion of the special education service funding that they receive every year is allocated for non-public school kids, public schools are not required to distribute those funds equally. So meaning they can run out before they get to your kids, or they'll give less services, less money for services to homeschooler kids before the public school kids. So homeschool kids leaving behind an IEP may not receive the same services. For instance, say you need speech therapy, and instead of paying for it privately, you would like to go through your school. They don't have to give you as many services as they gave you when you were a public schooler. If you would like to use their services for things like speech therapy, it's best to contact your district and talk to them and see how they handle it, because every case is different, every IEP is different, every services needs are different. On the homeschooling side, once you're on your own in homeschooling, you aren't really considered an IEP. You're not part of the school anymore. You're a private school. So some schools are willing to work with you a little bit on services, but for the most part, you're on your own. If you need more information in this area, let me know and I'll try and put you in contact with some people who have gone through it. It's really better to see if you can find someone from your district who's gone through it, because every school is different, and every school, some are really friendly, some are really, well, you got to figure it out on your own. Okay. Driver's ed is one of these small exceptions that we're going to talk about. Public schools are required to allow teens access to driver's ed, but the word is access. Sometimes they'll put you on a waiting list, and that waiting list might be a couple years long. So be aware of that. They are required, but they're allowed to say, we don't have room right now. to get access to driver's ed, you also have to be able to prove proof of home education and passing grades. So this at the high school level, which we'll talk about, you need to be really good about keeping track of your kids' grades. And you're going to have to contact the school district to see how they're going to handle driver's ed. Also keep in mind that some have really early days where you have to let them know about driver's ed. And I can see that I have some chats here. Oh, going back, should we request transcripts? It's up to you. If you think it'll be helpful for you to have your transcript, go for it. If not, you don't need it. And then I see another here. I will talk to you, Kristen, privately later. Let's see. Driver's ed. Also be aware that private driver's education courses are also available through companies. And you can do that. They cost a little bit more than they do at the high school, but they're more on your own time. And you don't have to, if your school especially is going to put you on a waiting list that you have no idea when it's ever going to happen, it might be a smarter idea. Also, there's a link down here at the bottom, and the link is going to give you the law for driver's ed. So if you contact a school and you just know that you need to go through the school to do it, you can use the legal link down there to say, you have to help me, let me have access to it. It's law now, and that might help you. All right. Athletics. This is a tricky subject. Participation is up to the discretion of your school district. Again, they're not required to allow your child to participate in athletics or any extracurricular activity. If they don't have room, they don't have to let you. Even if they do have room, they don't have to let you for public school athletics, mainly because many intramural sports organizations have requirements that make it really difficult for homeschool students to participate. This doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Sometimes you get lucky and some school districts will let you participate with some really specific guidelines of what you have to do to be able to be included. But then again, others will say, yeah, we don't have the room, or we're not willing to provide that, and they can do that. Be aware that there are private organizations options for youth sports. So you can still do youth sports that are league. Like if your town has a soccer league, you could still do soccer that way. Or there are even homeschool groups that do track and basketball. Sometimes you have to drive a little bit farther, but they still exist if that's something that's really important to your child. Part-time public schooling. So some people decide that they want to have their kids do part-time school. So they want them to go do, I don't know, band and math class. It's entirely up to the discretion of the school district. Some say, okay, no problem, we'll work it out. Others say, yeah, we don't have room for that, and we're not willing. And they're allowed to do that. Be advised, if you participate in part-time schooling, that your child will be held to the same standards as other public school kids in regards to attendance or school hours. So even if you homeschool and you're used to picking up and going on vacation, and you decide to take 2 weeks off to go on a backpacking trip or something, your kid is gonna get in trouble for missing that amount of school, even if it's only like 1 hour of music class a week. So keep that in mind if you're gonna approach your school about part-time public schooling. And again, you'll need to contact your individual school district. Returning for 12th grade. So some families decide that they are gonna homeschool all the way until 12th grade, and then their kids are gonna go back for their senior year so they can do all the senior year things. Some people try that, and some people do it. It's allowed, you can do that, as long as you've done sufficient coursework that your kids are gonna meet the requirements, pass the placement tests to get into 12th grade, and then they can participate just like everybody else. Keep in mind though, is that something your child wants to do or you want to do? Some people have really good memories of high school, and they think, oh man, prom. They'll miss prom, they'll miss graduation ceremonies, they'll miss all that classic senior year stuff. Not every kid, especially if they've been homeschooled for a long time, they might not care. But if they do care, then this is a consideration. also keep in mind that these events all exist for homeschoolers. There has been a homeschool prom for the last, as far as I know, 6 years in the area that someone puts on every year. There are also graduation ceremonies and all those other classic experiences in the homeschooling community. They look very much the same. Lots of awkwardness. It's pretty funny. Graduation ceremonies themselves. Some people ask, can my kid go participate at the local school's graduation ceremony? No, because it's not their school. Their school is a private school. It's a homeschool. So you can't participate in their graduation ceremony. But again, there are many groups of parents, and there are different co-ops, which we'll talk about later, that come together and put together graduation ceremonies that your homeschooler can participate in if they choose to. Graduation. So as a private school, you get to award your graduate certificate when you deem your student has graduated, which is pretty crazy. And that's usually the thing that blows a lot of people's mind when they ask, so how do you graduate your kid? You decide as a parent that they have learned the things that you have set out for them to learn, and you graduate them, and you print out their graduation certificate. You can find templates online. Please take into account the requirements of their future employer or school or organization that they're going to be applying to, because if you've graduated them but they don't have the things they need to get into college, then they really haven't graduated. If you would like to know what's required by public schools in the state of Illinois, you can look at the document that I have right here linked to and see exactly what the state of Illinois requires for a public school to graduate. It's very enlightening. If you've got one in high school, it's good to know, good to have that information. Re-enrolling in public school. So say you're deciding you just want to do this for the year because of all the COVID stuff going on, and then you want to put them back in school. That's awesome. Contact your district and say you would like to re-enroll your child. They will most likely have to do a placement test to determine their grade level to make sure they're on the same grade level as their peers. But it really, I haven't tried it, but I've heard it's not difficult to put your kid back in public school. At the high school level, you are going to want to be very clear about what you've had them take so far. But again, they're still probably going to have to take placement testing. What about college? I get this one all the time because I have a high schooler now. So due to prevalence of homeschooling, it's been around now for a while, most colleges have a procedure in place for how they're going to consider homeschoolers. And high schoolers will want to keep very close track of their coursework and grades, and they will also want to make sure that they're completing the requirements. So if they need to have had 4 years of a foreign language, then you need to make sure that you figure that out. Where can I find more information on homeschooling? So I showed you before the Illinois State Board's education landing page. They also have a handy fact sheet that you can print off in PDF form that goes more in depth. Illinois House is a good website that has lots of information. HSLDA, a lot of people like to look there. Remember, if you're looking at a website that is not from the state that you're looking at, when's the last time it's been updated? Is it current? Look at the publication year. And you can look at a variety of homeschooling pages on Facebook. Make sure you're checking to search by town and county and state as well to find things locally. Also, Fossil Ridge Library has a homeschool librarian, and her name is Tammy Smith, and she is excellent. She has a whole section of the library that is all homeschool materials, and we'll talk about that later. But she's also a really good resource because she can help answer questions as well. I see a question here about how would it look if homeschooled until 8th grade, but then going into public school as a freshman in high school. Piece of cake. You do it just like you would do any other grade. You contact the school, say you'd like to register your child. They will likely do a placement test to make sure that they are up in the right grade level, and it's not any different than going into a different grade. You can even pull kids out of high school, homeschool them for a year, put them back in, just like any other grade. All right. Okay, so now we know all the laws, but now what? Right, the nuts and bolts of it. I know we know the laws, but how do we do this? All right, how do we actually do it? All right, people homeschool for lots of different reasons. It could be not just COVID stuff that's going on, but it could be religious concerns, health issues, being behind a grade level, being ahead a grade level, learning disabilities. Kids are actors. They sometimes can't attend school because of that, or they have athletic careers that have them travel a lot. There are poor performing school districts. Sometimes there's bullying. Sometimes parents are former teachers and say, hey, I just want to do this on my own because I know what I'm doing. Some families love to travel, and this lets them travel. There are lots of reasons that people homeschool, so please don't make assumptions about why people are homeschooling. We're all trying to figure out what's best for our kids, and keep that in mind when we're talking to each other. We're all representing homeschool, so don't assume everyone's doing it for the same reason. That actually causes a lot of conflict, and unfortunately it can get kind of mean sometimes. There are many types of homeschooling too. I like this comic. I saw it and it made me laugh. We're going to touch on a few, but it's by no means exhaustive. There's everything from school at home, Christian homeschooling, secular homeschooling, classical homeschooling, Catholic homeschooling, Charlotte Mason homeschooling, Waldorf homeschooling, Montessori homeschooling, unschooling, and eclectic. So I just picked 10. There are more. And none of them are right. There's right for your family, there's right for your kids, but there's no right overall because they're all just different types of learning. We're going to talk about the ones that we just listed here. So schooling at home, homeschool, is trying to recreate a school at home. So this is where you're going to see families that have the desks at home and the blackboard in the front, and there's a globe, and you're doing the same curriculum that they would do at public school, which you can buy on your own, by the way. So if that appeals to you and you like creating your school at home, you can do that. And you'll be sitting and you'll have the times for classes, whatever. That works. There's Christian homeschooling. And this is what most people think of when they think of homeschooling, as it was the pioneering type of homeschooling in the US. It's been going on for quite a while now. It has a strong emphasis on religion. And a lot of the homeschooling programs are geared towards Christian homeschoolers because this is the type of homeschooling that has been around the longest. And that is pretty much the simple fact of it. There's secular homeschooling, which focuses on evidence-based education. It seeks out curricula without a religious bias. And it can be both the choice of people who don't practice a religion and families that practice a religion, because some people choose to use materials without a religious bias, even if they are practicing Christians, let's say. So don't assume because someone's using a certain curricula, they believe a certain thing. Classical homeschooling is a traditional method of learning that stretches back to the Middle Ages. This is where you're talking about Socrates and Plato, and it's actually got a large history behind it. It has a heavy emphasis on the stages of learning. So there are different stages for different ages that do different things. There's an emphasis on memorization, recitation, and writing. It's very structured. So there's like a progression that you follow. Catholic homeschooling, it also has a strong emphasis on religion. Often the books are very different from what you would get from the Christian homeschoolers. And it tends to follow a classical approach and often includes the teaching of Latin. Charlotte Mason homeschooling has become very popular out of like nowhere in the past, I don't know, 5 years. And now it's, when you see the Pinterest, there's a lot of Pinterest of Charlotte Mason homeschooling. It's based on the philosophy of a 20th century educator named Charlotte Mason. The emphasis is on being very well-rounded as a person, so very liberal arts. It encourages free play, nature, lots of nature, music and art, along with all the classical subjects. And there is an emphasis on classic, hearty, meaty literature. Waldorf homeschooling is based on the teachings of German philosopher Rudolf Steiner. There's an emphasis on educating the mind, body, and spirit all together. It encourages art, music, and imagination, lots of imagination, and shuns technology. So when you're on Pinterest, Waldorf are the kids with all the wood toys and beautiful stories. All right. Montessori homeschooling is based on the teachings of educator Maria Montessori. It encourages life skills, and there's an emphasis on learning at one's own pace, and it is very hands-on. So it's very do it yourself and figure out and learn how to do it by doing it. There's a lot of preschools that use Montessori activities, but it does extend. There is a whole philosophy of Montessori teaching that goes all the way through high school. Unschooling is child-led or interest-led learning. It is based on projects, and the parents act as assistants to the child's education, but let the child determine the course of the education. So this is something where you're not, as a parent, going to sit down and say, here, you need to work through this. The kid is going to say, I would like to build a suit of armor. And the parents say, cool, what do you need? And then they teach them, they give them the opportunities to help figure it out. So they might need math to do the measurements. They might need science to learn how to do the smelting or whatever. And then they'll do research on the literature of the time period. And so it's a different way, a very different way of learning, but it works for some. Eclectic homeschooling. The family borrows bits and pieces from many styles of homeschooling to best suit their needs. This is generally the choice of most homeschoolers that I know. So even if you say, I'm Charlotte Mason, but then you do a lot of unschooling projects on the side, or, you know, this is where you don't fit into a category, which is the majority of people, I think. From my personal experience, I see most families picking and choosing for what works from all the different areas. This is how my family learns. We do a variety of methods and combine them, and we've just found what works best for us. And it's perfectly okay, and the word for that is eclectic. To pick curriculum, there are many, many options, and I'm sure based on the posts that I have seen lately that you're all wondering, what do I pick? Where do I start? I have no idea to where even to start. My biggest advice to a new homeschooler is to don't commit to one company and spend lots of money on it, because chances are pretty good you're going to be 2 months in and your kid is going to hate it, and then you'll have spent $500 on this curriculum that just is not working for your family. Start small. If you think you're going to like a program, buy a little bits and pieces of it, or see if you can borrow it, or go to the Fossil Ridge Library and see if you can check it out for a few weeks and see if you like it before you commit to it, because chances are pretty good you're going to change several times, and that's okay. I think we've previewed about, I don't know, 6 different math curricula. We've done 4 or 5 different language arts over the years. It's okay. It's okay to do that. You can also cherry pick for each subject. So if you want to buy a whole curriculum in a box and it's a full year and that makes you feel really good, then go for it. But you're also allowed to just pick, hey, that looks nice from here, I'm going to try this, and that looks nice from here, and so it's all right. Let's see, someone had to leave. So you are allowed to cherry pick and pick out things that you think would work best. That is what we have done, I think, for the whole time, because that's just what works best for us. You can use online classes. There are lots of options for online. Some kids do really great on a computer and doing their schoolwork on a computer. Some kids including mine, don't seem to retain it as well when they do online classes for things like math. So you just have to kind of see what works best for your kid, if that's going to work for you or not. Some homeschoolers opt for co-ops. So a co-op is when a group of parents decide that they are going to teach together and take turns teaching and having classes. Some of them are very, very structured and organized and run basically like a small school. Others are pretty laid back and will be just a group of neighborhood or town friends, and they trade off teaching things. But that's one way to learn as well. My personal experience is, if you're going to opt for that, make sure you know what they're going to teach, because it's one thing to say, all right, so-and-so is going to teach English, but then when you look at what materials they're using, you may decide, ooh, I don't really like that. So just check into that if you're going to do a co-op. But some people really like them and it works really well for them, and that's cool too. I gave a couple links here. Rainbow Resource. They are a website, and they will send you a catalog that's like this thick with all different kinds of curriculums in it. Curriculums, I should know this by now, in it. And they have a handy chart in the book, and it tells you a couple things. It will let you know if it's a secular material or if it's a Christian-based material. It will let you know if it's a material that needs lots of prep. So mom needs to read the book and administer the lesson and know how to administer the lesson and do the whole like teacher lecture thing. And some books are open and go, where the kid just opens it, reads it, and it teaches them as they're reading it. So if you prefer one or the other, it will let you know that too. So I think it's a really handy book if you really don't know what you even want, because it gives you lists, and then you can go to the website for that particular curriculum and say, and look more up, read more on it. So it's a really good place to start. Homeschool Buyers Co-op is another page where you can go and see different curriculum, and they buy in a big group, so they often can buy things for a cheaper price than you would be able to buy on your own. So that's a good resource as well. All right, what and when? This is a new slide. So I've done this presentation for several years now. Usually I do it through a local library. This is the first time I'm doing it online. This is a slide that I just added because I think it's pretty important. The state of Illinois in general does not mandate what needs to be taught when in a private school. So for example, it's up to you to decide when to teach multiplication. That's your choice. If your kid's not ready for it by 3rd grade, then you wait a year. No big deal. If this makes you nervous, if you're like, I need structure, I need to know what I gotta teach, I need to know, I can't do this, it's too open, that's okay. You can peek at the Illinois Learning Standards for your child's grade level. So I linked to that. This is also a good idea to know this if you are going to, if your aim is to put your kids back into public school at some point, you're going to want to know what all the kids in 3rd grade learned, and make sure that your kid in 3rd grade learned that too, so they don't have holes later on in their education. So whether you like Common Core or not, it doesn't matter, because there's at least it makes your job easier, because there's a list. You know exactly what kids are taught in public school, and if that's important to you to match that, then you know you have a resource to know where to find that information. If you're searching for a curriculum that matches what is taught in the public school, you can use the term Common Core aligned in your Google search, and that will make sure your curriculum that you're picking is going to match the public school curriculum that you're using. It'll teach the same things at the same time, if that's important to you. Illinois high school graduation requirements are found in the PDF that I have linked there. So if you're concerned, if you have a high school age student, and I know some of you do based on registrations, if you want to make sure that you're teaching the same things that they would have learned in high school, you can check there. Also be aware that kids in public school are required to be taught civics, and you should teach your kids civics too. So there are a couple PDFs there, again, listing exactly what the state says should be taught to each kid. How do you find this magical curriculum? The internet is your friend. If you have a education style that really resonates with you, you're like, oh, Charlotte Mason, she just knows my soul. You can look that on the internet, and you can also say, hey, I'm on the Facebook page. Are there any other Charlotte Mason learners here? Can I pick your brain for a minute? Can I ask you what books do you use? And that's really helpful too. Let's see, you can talk to them if you can see that, hey, you guys travel all the time and do some really awesome field trips, and you're always learning fascinating stuff. Can I ask, what do you guys use? And that might open some doors that you hadn't thought of before. Again, the Fossil Ridge Library, that's a great place to start too. You go park your butt there and start looking through books, and you might wander across something that you find interesting. How do I connect with other homeschoolers? So the internet is your friend. Facebook is particularly helpful now. Didn't used to be. It used to be that there were little groups, and if you didn't belong to a certain group for homeschooling, you had no access to the information. You couldn't find anybody. And so I started the Facebook page, I think it's been about 5 years ago, and I just joined every group I could find and then started posting all the information in one spot because I was irritated that I couldn't find it. And so now we have, I think we're almost up to 600, I have to look, people. And normally during a normal school year, you would see all kinds of stuff being posted on the page. And if you go back in the history, you'll see it. So-and-so is having a gymnastics class for homeschoolers. Here's a nature class. We're going to do this prom, and you'll be able to find it in one place. So if you have a resource, please share it on the page, because that's what makes it a lot more fun for everybody. When you're searching on Google, make sure not just your town, but your county. You can also search homeschool as 2 words and homeschool as 1 word, and you'll get different results and see what comes up. A few groups still operate on email lists. Apparently this was how they used to do it back in the day. And if you weren't on their email list, you could not find the information you were looking for about activities in the area. So I have noticed a movement away from that in the past couple years, and most things are available online now. Also, my favorite is visit parks and museums and even local parks during the day and see what other kids are there, because chances are pretty good if it's, you know, 11:30 on a Tuesday, yeah, those kids are going to be homeschooled too. So it doesn't hurt. I've met some great people that way. And it's been kind of funny because you just know that they're homeschoolers too. All right, the dreaded S word, socialization. I bet most of you right now, if you're brand new to it, this is your biggest #1 concern, socialization. It was mine too when we started. I thought, oh, my kid's already weird, and now he's going to be a homeschooler, and he's going to be really weird when he's not around people. But after you get started, you realize there are many, many opportunities for socialization, and that having your kid homeschooled isn't going to make him weird. Me having him as my child, I'm weird, so that might make him a little weird, but it's not going to be from the homeschooling. You'll find your tribe of people. So you're going to find the people that you really resonate with. You will find those people who they get you, you get them, and they're kids most likely, because you're just going to get along together. The kids will get along together well. You're going to find lots of activities. Some of them will be homeschooling activities specifically. So you'll find your kids will find other kids who are just as weird as them. You'll be doing your you'll be doing your sword casting class, because that happened. My kids cast swords for homeschooling, and they'll find other little freaks just like them who are super excited to do their sword casting class. But then they'll have friends outside of homeschooling too. My kids both participate in 4-H and Boy Scouts, and they have made some of their best friends through those activities as well. They talk to them every day. They do sleepovers, they go play at houses, they do all the normal kid stuff that kids stuff do. Just because kids are 25 of them, 30 of them are in a classroom all day long doesn't mean they're friends and doesn't mean they're nice to each other. So the other thing you need to keep in mind too is that you're there to help coach your kids through tricky things, tricky social situations that you might not have been there before, to be able to help them through it. Also, you're there to help them learn some life skills that they maybe might not have done. How many young adults do you know now who are afraid to talk on the telephone? So with my kids, that's something we make them do. If they want to know if the store is open, guess what? You get to call. I'll stand right here and coach you through it. But they learn a lot of skills that way. Same with going out with doing stuff with mom during the day. I can have my kids do the shopping. I'll be standing right behind them, but they can follow a list and walk through the store and, you know, collect the things and do the money and do the math. And that's a really important skill. So socialization is not something, I think after 6 months, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm not worried. This is going to be fine. And pretty much every veteran homeschooler is going to tell you the same thing. Where you're going to see problems is if you hole up in your house and don't go out. Which if that's a concern, then that's a legit concern. But most families, you're going to make the effort to go out and do things. And if you do that, they'll be fine. I did get a question for what is 4-H. 4-H is a program. It used to be like showing cows and chickens and things like that, baking bread. And it still is all those things, but they've added lots of other stuff, including science and art projects. And you work on these projects, use parliamentary procedure in your meetings, so they learn a little bit about parliamentary procedure. They learn how to finish projects, and then they get to show them at the fair. So they get to show things like woodworking and their pet guinea pig and their sword they casted, all those things. They're project books, and they're great for homeschoolers. So if you haven't explored 4-H, that is a very good program for homeschoolers. So is scouting. Scouting's been huge in our family, and it's worked wonders as an extracurricular for my kids. Let's see. Great points on socialization. Yes. Just because they're at school doesn't mean it's good socialization. All right. Activities other than school. So we were just talking about that. Let's see. Co-ops, homeschooling network groups, nature centers, music schools, 4-H and scouting programs, sports facilities, libraries, theaters, zoos, museums. They all often have programs that are just for homeschoolers, and you don't always see them in their regular materials. It might be buried on the page on their website, but they have them sometimes. And then you can go do it during the day, which is great because they're empty, and it's magical. It's like homeschooler Disneyland. I can't wait till y'all go back to school and I can go to the museum and not have anybody there. So, but they often offer classes, and if they don't be shy about asking for a class. And usually, I know gymnastics have done it, a couple other places have done it for me. If you ask them, can we put together a homeschooler class, they most oftenly will say, yes, if you can get me 15 kids, I'll run it. And we've had a lot of success doing that. My one personal thing that I'm going to say here is if you decide to join a class like that somebody's worked really hard to put together, please don't flake out and not attend. If you commit to doing it for a year, do it for a year. It's a lot of work to put those classes together and to collect the money from everybody and pay the teacher. And it's really frustrating when people just don't show up or don't pay you, which is even worse because I've been stuck with some bills before. So if you're going to do that, then make sure that you're committing to it. Also, consider putting together field trips with your new homeschooling friends or even people you don't know. You are welcome to use the Facebook page to put together trips. So if you contact, say, Panera Bread, who does field trips, and say, I would like to do a bread baking field trip, and they will say, okay, we need 10 kids. And you can go on the Facebook page and say, hey, I got 10 openings, or if you would like to buy tickets to a theater show. A lot of places, a lot of theaters, like in Joliet, the Rialto, they have children's theater programming during the school year, and it's for schools. But you can go reserve a block of tickets for a field trip and then open them up to the larger community and take your group of homeschoolers. Again, be careful, because ask for people to pay up front, not at the door. Otherwise, you'll have a whole lot of people who don't show up and you get stuck with the money, with paying for it. But it is doable. You just have to be willing to work out payments ahead of time. It's a lot of fun. You'll meet new people that way. I highly recommend it. I've done it lots of times. Okay. Keeping track of schoolwork. So you're not required to in Illinois. Illinois is one of the easiest states to homeschool in. You guys are really lucky. It really is. You don't have to keep track of anything here. However, if your child intends to return to public school eventually, or you're building a high school portfolio for college admissions, you're going to need to keep track of things. There are apps and computer programs that are available. I put a link to the one I personally use for my son who's in high school now. It gives like GPAs and things, but don't feel that you need to do it that way. There are lots of different ways. Especially for the younger kids, a notebook listing what you did is more than enough. Or even writing down like what books you used that year is more than adequate for, say, a second grader. For a kindergartner, I didn't keep track of anything. You really don't need to, because if they were going to go into public school, they would be taking a placement test anyway. They wouldn't ask to see what you've worked on. If you were concerned that someone would question whether you're schooling your children or not, you could have your list of what you've worked on. I think at first I did that a lot because I was worried. I watched the bus stop was in my driveway, and I would watch the kids get on the bus as my kids were running around in their pajamas in the backyard screaming. I'm like, someone's gonna report me. No one ever reported me, but I did feel pressured to keep track of things a lot, very closely at first. But usually you don't need to buy anything fancy. You don't need to pay for a PDF. You can use just, a basic notebook and write down what they did that day in it. And that works for the younger kids especially. Okay, legal insurance. So some homeschoolers feel safer purchasing a form of legal insurance through companies such as HSLDA. So Homeschoolers Legal Defense. You'll see a lot of people who say, you need to join it, I've been a member. Be aware, it's a form of legal insurance. I want you to understand that homeschooling has been legal option in all 50 states since 1993. So homeschooling's been around for a while now. Illinois is a very homeschool friendly state. So there are not a lot of requirements other than, you got to teach your kids. Keep in mind that the legal insurance company, it's literally, they make money from you buying policies, memberships. So unfortunately, they use some scare tactics to try and get people to feel insecure and buy memberships. Basically, you're buying legal insurance. That if you have any problem, if someone reports you and then you followed up and you're in trouble with the law, that they will come in and protect you. If that's what you need to sleep at night, okay, that's fine. You can do what you want. Keep in mind also that some of these companies lobby politically in unrelated causes, so things that are not homeschooling. So if you choose to purchase a membership, make sure you agree with what they are lobbying politically. I have never had legal insurance. If I had problems, I could contact a lawyer independently. And so it's up to you. If it's your choice, but don't feel pressured that you need it, because you don't. Membership cards. Some places will require a proof of homeschooling for the homeschool discounts. It's great because you can get like teacher prices on things, or you can get free entry into museums, but you need to prove that you're a homeschooler. You do not need to register with the Board of Education. That used to be the loophole. They used to try and tell you you have to register and have that paperwork to get into the museum. You don't. Don't let anybody tell you that. You can purchase a homeschool ID card online and print it. Have it sent to you, or you can print it at home and laminate it yourself. I did put a link in there of one that a lot of people use, and they send you a nice little plastic card. You can name your homeschool, so you could be like, I don't know, the Wise Old Owl Homeschool is your name of your school, or you can just put homeschool on the card as well. Some co-ops also offer cards, so that's another benefit. But you can print your own. You're a private school, remember, you can do it what you want. All right, last thing, you know your child the best. How you learn and how your child learns might be different, okay? So if it makes perfect sense to you, it might not be how their brain is wired. Your kids might even learn differently than each other. I have 2 kids who learn very differently, and curriculum that worked for one did not work for the other. You know your kid best. You know when they're learning. You know when they're not learning, okay? So trust that. If it's not working, you can change it. There's no rule that says you have to stick through with the same thing for the whole year and commit to it. You can change it, and don't be afraid to change and find what's right for learning for your kid and for your family too. If it's working great for them, but you're running yourself ragged trying to figure it out, then maybe it's not working great. Maybe you need to think about something that's going to work differently. So take it one little step at a time. You don't have to, like, there's no rule that says, okay, come August 15th, we have to full on, we're going to do this, we're going to get started. You can do it bit by bit by introducing one subject a week or something, whatever works for your family. Do little bits, little chunks, ease into it. You're in it for a long haul. Homeschooling is a culture of lifelong learning. It's not just like we're getting you through school. We're teaching them to love learning, and it can be a lot of fun if you let it. So really enjoy it. Take your time with it. There's no rush. There's no, it has to be done by this date. Take your time and enjoy it, because honest, this is one of the coolest things that my family has done, and I'm so glad that we made this choice because we have had a lot of fun learning together. And with that, I want to thank you all very much for my TED Talk. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And if you have any questions now is a great time to ask those questions, or you can unmute yourself, or you can type them into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer things.